It's terrible, about just where math came from. All of the pictures that they've shown out of Africa, they've never really educated the Americans, white or black, about what really goes on in Africa, what some of the cities are really like, and that we're not running around over there with Tarzan, and when they show anything from Africa, even down to today, they pick the worst scenes, the most terrible situations, and they show those, but we have a proud history. But of course, what we did in Egypt 5,000 years ago, or what we did in China 35,000 years ago, is of no benefit if we don't understand what to do today and how that would help us to survive. We discovered the clock. We did discover the wheel. Black man has never been a caveman. You've never been in the cave. There's no history of it. You've ever been in a cave. We discovered mathematics and the alphabet and writing and all of those great things that they have built a foundation on, that they came and got and took back to other countries. We don't know what Africa would be like without the white influence. We don't know what it would be like without the Rockefellers and De Beers and all of them. We don't know what Africa would have been like. We do know that there were greater places in Africa other than Egypt, which is the only one they let us know about.
The Russian language that we know today can be attributed to a black man named Alexander Pushkin. He created the modern Russian language because they were speaking French and other types of language there.
Had it not been for someone like Alexander Pushkin, Russians would be speaking French today.
A lot of people say that people like Leonardo da Vinci and Sir Isaac Newton, they created a lot of inventions in Europe, but a lot of their inventions can be attributed to the African presence that was in Europe, because there was a strong African presence and they were bringing in science and mathematics, so that's where all that came from.
Leonardo da Vinci, Galileo, all of them studied with African people. They didn't come up with this. And when people talk about Leonardo da Vinci, the only question that I have as it relates to Leonardo da Vinci is, who was his teacher? Who taught Leonardo da Vinci brain anatomy? Who taught him about the airplane? Who taught him this? Tell me, who was his teacher? They can't tell you who the teacher is, because if they told you who the teacher is, they would have to tell you they were black.
A lot of the founding of America was based on Moorish science. If you see paintings of the inauguration of George Washington, it looked like a Masonic ritual. So again, Masonry is based on Moorish science. So they would have these Moorish advisors around them. If you look at old paintings of George Washington, you will see George Washington standing next to a black man with a turban. And remember, when you see the black man with the turban, that's a Moor, that's not a slave. See, people automatically assume that black is slave, but slaves didn't wear no turbans, because remember, slaves weren't allowed to practice no Islam or any other kind of religion except Christianity. So when you see that turban, that's a black man. And there's a few pictures of George Washington and other people with Moors or black men with turbans standing next to him. When you see that, just know that those are Moors. The Lumbee and the Melungeon people, these were an Aboriginal tribe of people who were living in the Americas, and they came over, and a lot of people act like they don't know where they came from because they were classified as free people of color. And there were other groups called red bones. This is where we get calling a light-skinned person a red bone. These are old terms, and these people had come over before Columbus. They've been over for a long time. And again, the Melungeons were almost classified as black or Negro, but they called them free people of color. And in some circles, they did classify the Melungeons and the Lumbees as Negro. Abraham Lincoln's mother came from a Melungeon background, and people were very aware of this back then. When they were running against Abraham Lincoln in the campaign, his opponents would use that information and try to use it against him. Because remember, back in those days, in order to insult somebody or in order to stain somebody's image, you just had to say they were Negro, or they were mixed with a Negro, or they had a Negro background. And they would do that with Abraham Lincoln. There's old pictures in newspapers of Abraham Lincoln dressed up like a Moor. They would call him Abraham Africanus. Benjamin Banneker, he was a black man who created the first known almanac. He helped design the city of Washington, D.C. He was a descendant of the Dogon tribe of West Africa, very well versed in astrology.
You see, it's like if I took an animal and put it in a cage, and so the animal couldn't grow well. And then I'll say, oh, look at this deformed animal. Do you see? I don't say, I made this creature deformed because of the conditions that I subjected him or her to. And the very fact that, in other words, the logic, in my view, if you felt that blacks were genetically, inherently inferior, you can give them the very best of conditions, and they would not be able to perform or function. Do you see? But the need to deprive, at the same time that people are saying, oh, it's cold outside, make sure your dog is in. Make sure your dog gets all the nutrients for growth and development, because you're not fearful that the dog is going to take over the human beings. Do you see? But once you start depriving, systematic deprivation, it means, well, I must be afraid of these people maybe overtaking me if I allow them the same conditions, opportunities that I set forth for myself.
So we keep talking about, our mantra for over 75 years has been, we gotta have unity. We gotta have unity. No, we don't. We don't have to have unity with each other. We just need to get the same idea. And the other thing is that our educators can't decide on what is the history. That's a problem. If you get 10 of them in here in a room, all 10 of them will have a lot of differences about where the civilization started, what we did, who did it, and where. Okay? White people agree on their history, even if it's a lie, they agree on it. Patrick Henry, they agree on that, Marco Polo, whoever it is, they agree. Yep, that's what he did. Yep, that's what they did. They don't have an argument about what the truth is. They just came together, decided on what the history is going to be, and then that's what they accepted, and that's what they teach their children, and that's what they teach our children.